I would like to introduce Jim Krug. He's the president of the Long Island chapter with the Catholic League. He's a graduate of Charlotte High School. He's been teaching at Bishop Helen Memorial High School since 1994. He's also a guidance counselor, and he was asked to be the leader of the Long Island chapter of the Catholic League in 1998. He has articles, numerous in local publications, and has been frequently seen on local media and outlets, including News 12 Long Island. Jim Krug.
Thank you, Aidan, for organizing this, all those who are involved with organizing this important program. Thank you, Mr. McDonald, for hosting this. It's something that really needs to be done in every parish across the country. And also, it's a privilege to be here with Rabbi Spero. Real honor, and I'm sure you would enjoy his words very much. I guess some of you are familiar. I've seen you at some other events, so forgive me if I repeat some of my stories. But I think some of these stories are important to understand really where we're all going as religious believers, all right? Not just Catholics, but as religious believers in general. As a young man, growing up, I grew up in Floral Park, sixth generation, German Catholic. My great-great-grandfather had a farm where Salonica High School is. And he came over in the latter part of the 19th century, late 1800s. And I heard a lot of stories about him and my family as a kid. My grandmother loved to call me very often when I was young, 10, 11, 12 years old. And she'd tell me stories. Whenever she called, I knew I'd be on the phone for a pretty long time. And when I was 10, 11, 12 years old, I kind of dreaded the phone a little bit because I knew I was probably going to be occupied for a while. But looking back, I'm so grateful to her. So any of you who are grandparents, make sure you share these stories with your grandchildren because they're important. They may not see, kids might not see them going here now, but they will appreciate it. Believe me. I know I do. I do very, very much. And now I'm able to share it with my students and with you today. One important, or a couple important stories she told me was, first of all, why my great-great-grandfather came over from Germany when he did. At the time, there was a movement going on in Germany led by a leader there named Aidan. And he had started a program called the Kulturkampf, which in German means culture struggle. And he was in northern Germany. He was from the area where it was in Russia. And his idea, it was during that time of the 1800s when there was this strong nationalist movement going on. And the idea was that to be a true German meant this, or whatever Bismarck said it was. Okay? And what it meant was you had to be Northern German Prussian, you had to be Lutheran, and that was about it. So, but that excluded a lot of people, particularly Catholics. And so my family who were in the Bavarian area of southern Germany, around the city of Bamberg, they thought at first that, okay, this guy has crazy ideas, but, we'll see what happens. But all of a sudden, it started to affect them. Bismarck decided that in order to unite these German kingdoms, all these different German kingdoms, under a Prussian domination, he would need to do things together in a great line. And so he did a couple of things. One of the first things he did was he exerted a tax, very high tax, on Catholics, particularly in these regions. My great-great-grandfather and his father were landowners, they were farmers. And so because of that, their land was heavily taxed. So much so that they realized it wasn't financially feasible to stay, or at least farm. And so they sold their farm, took the money, went over to the States, came here to Long Island with the hope of going back to their homeland one day. Once Bismarck had his whole thing fizzled, they hoped. But of course they didn't, right? They didn't, that never fizzled, and unfortunately, ultimately targets during that time. And so he came to Long Island, he bought a piece of land, Franklin Square, Floral Park border, before it was even called Floral Park, and he helped build St. Monica's Church, which is in Elmont, which was a German church, German Catholic church. He's actually buried in the cemetery behind there now. And he felt that his family would now be able to at least live some type of relative peace, religious peace, be able to practice their faith without anyone disturbing them. And it seemed like that would continue. Move ahead to his children, 1920s. Now you have a generation of German Catholics speaking English, and a village being set up for Floral Park. And in Floral Park, there's a very, very strong anti-Catholic movement there. I don't realize that, but there was. And my grandmother would tell me stories of living there as a Catholic. They were trying to build a church called Our Lady of Victory. And as they were trying to build that church, there was a lot of opposition. In fact, they needed men during those days to walk families to church on Sunday morning because they would be harassed by the locals. My grandmother remembers stories of the knock on the door, and they say, "We're here to work at Mass." They walk them to Mass, but there'd be groups of people spitting at them, harassing Catholics as they went to Mass. It's something you don't really hear of too much. Something we don't really realize as Americans. We don't think of that happening here. And yet it was very much a part of Catholic life, at least for my family, in the 20s. And in fact, it was during those days that the Ku Klux Klan came to Long Island. I believe it was 1926. They had some rallies here on Long Island. And a lot of people don't realize that they were not only against African Americans and Jews, but also very strongly against Catholics. And in fact, my grandmother remembers when one night they burned a cross on the grounds. Our Lady of Victory Church was in the process of being built. So those were scary times. And yet, looking forward now, the majority of people there are Catholic. And so they were able to overcome that by the unity that they had with each other and support. Soon, after the Second World War, it seemed that Catholics had moved into a point of great security. It seems that in the United States in general, Catholics started to be accepted, many think because Catholics proved their loyalty to the country that had been doubted by many before that. Great heroes of the Second World War were Catholics, and so they started to be accepted. Before you knew it, it was an incredible pride to be Catholic, and not only that, but a great admiration of Catholics. Who would think that one of the top TV shows in the 1950s was a bishop preaching a sermon, basically, for half an hour on NBC, right? Bishop Sheen. And that was one of the top TV shows in the United States. And of course, we know that it wasn't just Catholic bishops like Bishop Sheen or Catholic priests, but there was a religious sense in the 50s, right? Where there was a respect for faith. There was a respect for faith. And there were all types of things that led to people's faith being strengthened. So what happened? What happened? Why are we at the point we are now? As Aidan mentioned, that we are now at a point where we're afraid that we might have to be shutting down schools, hospitals, and all other types of things that the Catholic Church is involved with. Why are we at this point? There was a statement made about 2 years ago. Again, those who've heard me before, you've heard this quote, but I'm going to repeat it because I think it's a warning, and it's not just a warning for Catholics. It came from Cardinal George, the Archbishop of Chicago. If you know Cardinal George, he's not a man of extremes. He's a very balanced guy, very careful with his words. I had the privilege of meeting him a couple times. One time when he was made Cardinal of Rome. He's a close friend of his Pope. He's the Archbishop of Chicago, which says a lot. For the Pope to put someone in that important position means there must be a lot of confidence in him. He's a scholar. yet he said something that, when I heard it, gave me chills. It was, again, this was before the healthcare, this mandate started to become prominent, but there were other warning signs coming up that he was responding to, and I think it's applicable to what's happening now. He said this. He said, I expect to die in bed. I expect my successor to die in prison. And I expect his successor to die a martyr in the public square. And I'll repeat that again. I expect to die in my bed. I expect my successor to die in prison. I expect his successor to die a martyr in the public square. And again, if you knew Colonel George, you realize this is not some kind of crazy guy who's, apocalyptic. Far from it. Far, far from it. Yet he sees the battle lines that are being drawn right now. And we all need to see them. What is he talking about? What is it that is developing, or has been developing, really in the last 40 years, that makes a cardinal of the Catholic Church give such a dire warning? I think we could say, and I think the rabbi would agree with me, that there's been a rise of militant secularism. It's no longer a militant nationalism, like the Kulturkampf. It's not the ignorance of some type of fundamentalist view of Catholicism or other religion, but it's a well-planned, orchestrated, militant secularism that wishes to impose a culture on us. It's another Kulturkampf, but it's a different culture. It's a culture without God, without truth, without any type of moral absolutes, and it wishes to impose it on all of us. And if we dare to say that there might be a truth, that there might be some kind of moral absolutes, then we are an enemy. And so we see it now taking place. And then you might ask the question, well, why does it seem that the Catholic Church is getting targeted here? What about other religious groups? And I think we could say that this is a test run. That if they know that if they can get us, Catholics, everything else will fall. Think about the amount of involvement we have in the hospital systems in the United States, in the charitable institutions in the United States, our education system. If that can be undermined, everything else can be taken. There's no other religious denomination that we can really say is safe. One thing that comes up a lot is this use of language. Every revolutionary movement, every totalitarian movement that's come in history has known one very important thing, that you must control the language of the people. You must define what words mean. So words like freedom, words like choice, words like life, and we could go on and on. When it comes to this battle about the contraceptive mandate, as it's called, there's a real big question here. The question of freedom of worship, which is what they want to say we have. The government wants to say, you have freedom of worship. We're not going to bother you freedom of worship. As opposed to what's in the Constitution, which is this free exercise of religion. How do you exercise your religion? How do you exercise your religion? Is it only when you come in here? Or to your synagogue? When do you exercise your religion? Is it for an hour a week? We exercise our religion hopefully all day. I know my wife is a nurse. She's a nurse at Plymouth Peace residence, but one of the little sisters of the poor. Those sisters are exercising their religion 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, taking care of the elderly and poor. The brothers that went to my school, the Marians, are exercising their religion by educating young people not only in religious doctrines, but in math and science and English. We all exercise religion in numerous ways. Think of Catholic charities. Mayor Koch, great man, great friend of the Catholic Church over the years. He said if the Catholic Church ever pulled out of the charitable institutions that it runs in the city of New York, you would have homeless flooding the streets. It would be absolute chaos. And that's where we're at. That's where we're at. This is what we're threatened with right now. Because basically, what's happening is the church is being told, either you give in to this and you go, we tell you what it means to practice your religion, or we're going to shut you down. We're going to shut down what you're doing. We're going to force you to. Who really lives there? So, just to keep it within the 20 minutes here, I'll conclude with just one big question. What can we do? What can we do? The first big thing is to be unified. First of all, us Catholics, a lot of problems we've had is we fight with each other too much. And not only that, we fight it publicly. And when we're always fighting with each other, a lot of people who want to get rid of us love that. And they feed on that. They want some division, right? Divide and conquer. We have to stay unified. We have to realize, most of all, right here on this issue that we're dealing with immediately, is that it's not just about birth control. It's not just about birth control. It's about whether the state has the right to tell us how we live our faith and what we believe. And of course, that's not just something for Catholics. That's for every religious denomination, every religious group. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the famous Lutheran pastor who died under the Nazis, right? He has that famous line that said, first they came for the communists, I wasn't a communist, so I didn't say anything. Then they came for the socialists, and I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't say anything. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I wasn't a trade unionist, so I didn't say anything. They came then for the Jews, and I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't say anything. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to defend me. Unity, not only with those of your own religious denomination, but all Americans need to be unified on this. This is about every single American's right to practice their faith and believe what they want and to live it out. This is a frightening thing. We have to stay unified. That's why this event is so wonderful. To bring together those who recognize what's happening here. We need to spread the word. Internet, great thing. It can be a dangerous thing, but it can also be a great thing. This is a great way to get the word out. I see with my students, I tell them something that's important to know about, they do this tweeting, right? They just tweet it out, it's like hundreds of people, right? Hundreds of your Facebook, okay? We need to do that. We need to get on that. Spread the word of the dangers that we have, that we're, the rights that we have, that we're in danger of losing. We need to get the word out, especially as we move toward November. Finally, I would say that for all religious believers, that we need to pray. We need to pray. One great advantage of being someone who believes in a higher power is that we know that we have our strength is not from ourselves, right? Through someone higher than us, right? So we don't have to rely just on ourselves. That we have that it started with the case of St. Thomas More. St. Thomas More was a great hero of mine. He was a lawyer, he was the Chancellor of England, you could kind of say like the Prime Minister of England, right? And they had 6 children. And great man, honorable man. But when it came to his own religious beliefs, when he said he could not go along with the king, he was beheaded for those beliefs. He was beheaded for those beliefs. But one thing about him that's not too long, he was a man of deep prayer. He'd wake up every morning at 3:30 in the morning. He had his own child in his home. And he'd pray from 3:30 till 7:30 before he went out to work at the king's court. He knew that to be able to stand up for what you believe in, you need that strength and that higher power from God. And so we need to pray. We need to unite, not only in things like this, but also in prayer. And I think finally, as November moves, as we get closer to November, we have to let our voice be known with how we vote. We need our representatives to know that we are united as Catholics in what we believe, and we need to let our representatives know that if they don't represent us, we're going to have other people in there. So thank you for your attention, and God bless you all. And if you ever need the Catholic League, you can always, there's a lot of info I can go into with the Catholic League, or catholic.org. Great organization, and there's a lot I can lead to for religious rights for all people. So please look this up. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Jim, most importantly, to become very vivid in your mind that St. Francis Hospital here in Long Island closed down. Mercy Hospital would close down. Our schools would close down. Our soup kitchens, our counseling agencies. That's why we're having this today. Every one of you here today need to invite more people to come next Monday across the upper school cafeteria. Those people who are in different churches and temples, invite more of your friends to come. St. Aidan's will guide you and help continue to move forward as a united front. What Jim's talking about is very real. It's now we have to take action. That's why it's so important to educate yourselves, empower, understand, and move forward to have the courage to do whatever is necessary to protect our religion. Our next speaker came all the way from Philadelphia, and he was a rabbi here in Long Island for a number of years. He just published a book. He's been on Fox News, NPR, and many publications. He's a very versatile person who has a message that is very, very vivid and will let you think after you leave. And that's most important. I want everyone to be thinking about what I do not know and I have to learn. And then after I learn, where do I go to take the action? Here's Rabbi Spero.
I want to first try this without the microphone. Aidan, thank you for your remarks, your introduction. Nice to see you, Barbara, my friend, partner, Jim, and Monsignor McDonald. It's a pleasure and honor to be in your house of worship. To all members here, your community, thank you for having me back in Long Island. You know, Tony Bennett sang the song, I Left My Heart in San Francisco. I left my heart in Nassau County. After I had dinner with Aidan, I called my wife back in Philadelphia, and I said, Beth, you know where I am? Old Country Road, Willis Avenue, Roslyn, Northern Boulevard. But is it easier to hear me this way? Is the microphone a little confusing?
Take the mic. Maybe keep the mic away from you.
Okay.
Keep the mic away from you.
Okay. So we're here tonight to speak about religious freedom, a topic that no one here would have thought 3 years ago we would be concerned about. You know, sometimes in the life of institutions and countries, after decades and centuries, we forget what the original purpose of the institution was. Why was a country founded? Well, now it's time for us to remember this most vital point. America was founded precisely so that people could have religious freedom. They had left Europe, where those in power, whoever the majority was at the time, would not allow others to practice their religion. And they came to this new land not only because of opportunity, but because they wanted to practice their religion. The Americans who founded this country knew that. Most of us, I'm over 60, most of us who went to school back in the 1950s learned that, but I can tell you that the young people today do not know that America was founded precisely because of religious freedom, and that is why after the Constitution was written, the representatives demanded a Bill of Rights, with the first Bill of Rights being, Congress shall establish no religion, nor prohibit the free exercise thereof. And when they spoke of freedom of religion, they meant to be able to live one's life religiously in the full spectrum of life. Hospitals were religious hospitals. Most schools were religious schools. Most of life outside of the church took place in institutions that were guided by religious people, under a religious spirit, and with a particular view, a particular religious view. We would not be having this discussion in the year 2005 nor in the year 2007. We are having this discussion now because of a bill that passed but a year or two ago. Whatever it's called, HH 27 or 127, we all know it as Obamacare. This is the brainchild and the goal of a specific man, President Obama. Yes, the government will enforce it, but it was passed by a particular administration, a particular group of people. We don't live in the world of theory. It's not the government that is forcing us and challenging our religion. It's a particular administration that wrote this law, pushed this law, passed this law, and will enforce this law. I knew we were in trouble when I was listening during the first months of this administration. When President Obama got up at one of his press conferences and he spoke about freedom of worship. I was the first person to write about this, and I spoke about it on Fox News. I said, this is a strange phrase for America. I've heard the phrase freedom of worship in Europe, in social But in America, we were raised with the notion of freedom of religion. You see, freedom of worship says, look, you want to pray, you can go within the confines of four walls on Williston or Northern Boulevard, in St. Aidan's, in Temple Israel, and you can perform your worship there. That is not why our ancestors came to this country. They did not come here so that they would live a life of seclusion where the government would say, okay, you can pray at this time within these walls, but outside of the walls of your church, your religious life does not exist. Only the life that the government tells you exists. That's not why this country was founded. That's not why our ancestors shed blood. Because they knew that religious life is more than worship. It's more than prayer. Religious life is charity. Religious life is healing the sick. It's making hospitals. It's educating the young people. It's making schools. It's having charitable institutions. That's what a full religious life is. I don't think that the Monsignor or I went into the clergy simply so that we could conduct prayers within four walls. The mission of religion is so much more grand. It's to encompass all of life. And that's why there's a Mount Sinai. And that's why there's a St. Francis. And that's why there's a Good Samaritan. And that's why there's a hospital, a Jewish hospital, a whole network. That's why there's a Solomon Schechter school. And that's why there are schools all throughout the diocese. We Americans will not be told by this administration that we must live in secluded, isolated pockets where they will allow us to practice our religion. Let them do that in Belgium. Let them do that in certain parts of England, but not in the United States. That's why we're here, because this religious freedom is under assault. With the Catholic diocese, the Catholic Church, and the Catholic hospitals speak about abortion. Abortion is an issue that everyone knows is as important to Catholics as Yom Kippur is to me. We die for these things. With the Catholic Church, as with the Jewish people, define marriage the way it has been consecrated by God. It's not simply an opinion. It's not simply something that we only talk about in church. It's something that we believe. It's something that we live by. Everyone knows this. These things are being challenged deliberately. If Catholic churches are being forced to be between a rock and a hard place, this is a direct challenge from an administration who does not have the best interests of the church or the synagogue at heart. We're given the following dilemma. If you follow your conscience, you'll be out of business. If you want to stay in business, you have to defy your own conscience. When men defy their own conscience, they're no longer free men, they're no longer men of spirit. Living by conscience is the first principle of the Judeo-Christian ethos. Now, there are many in this administration, because they come from universities, perhaps they think that they are smarter than us. Perhaps they come from institutions where they think that what we do is archaic. After all, it's 2,000 years old, and there are people who are of a mindset that that which is new is better, and that which is classic is is that which is eternal. There are people in administrations that would tell us they know best how the people should live. Perhaps they don't like the fact that so much of American life is controlled not by them, but by the benevolent institutions of religion. What would happen to this country if there were no Catholic hospitals or Jewish hospitals, Catholic schools or Jewish schools, or wonderful Protestant institutions of charity? The government would have to fill the void. Those who believe that government should control every aspect of our life, this is what they want. And they have put us between a rock and a hard place. To survive economically, we have to give up our conscience. But we're not going to do that, because this is America. That's why we have elections. It's called Obamacare. There's only one way to get rid of Obamacare. There are other issues. For example, adoption. The Catholic Church has a very well-reasoned position on adoption that I agree with. If we are putting children up for adoption, I think it's best that they go into homes that are traditional homes, based on marriage as Western civilization has always decided marriage to be, in a legal sense, a man and a woman. None of us here are bigots or racists, as they like to call us, or homophobic. No one here says that because of a person's sexual inclinations, they don't have the right to vote, or the right to own a business, or the right to rent. None of us. But we have a definition for marriage. It's biblical, it's part of our heritage, and we have wisdom too. Wisdom does not reside simply among those in this administration who are going to tell us how we are to live. Religious freedom is more than prayer. It's to live a religious life. There's so much more to life than prayer. What this administration is doing is thoroughly un-American. Shouldn't be allowed. There would be a greater uproar, except that those of us on our side were more of the conservative element within the religion. It's the Orthodox Jews are more conservative in their outlook. It's the more conservative Catholics. There are liberal Catholics. There are radical Catholics. I love how I hear people speak in the name of Catholicism, and they were born Catholic. They seem to, in their mind, represent Catholicism, but they're not Catholic anymore. Just as I see Jewish people speaking in the name of Judaism about things that are contrary to the Torah. And there are people who call themselves Protestants who say things about the Bible when they speak in the name of Protestantism, and it's contrary to the Word, the black on white passage. We have a fight on our hands. We're not fighting the United States government. The United States government is the government of Washington, Jefferson, and Madison, and the Constitution. We are fighting people that have perverted the role of the United States government. Thank God we have elections. The founding fathers said that every 2 years, and especially 4 years, we have a chance, we the people, to correct mistakes. Let me just say one thing in conclusion. We as people of faith, we see and we feel the affront and the danger to our religious life. It stems from an administration, a view of government that is out of control. It will not stop as people of faith, of people of conscience, of people of spirit, of people who want to give to our children and grandchildren that which we inherited from people greater than us. An America where freedom reigns. An America where religion is more important than who happens to be in political position for these 2 years or for those 5 years. You know, they say that Thomas Jefferson was not a religious man. That's not true. He might not have been a holy roller, and he might not have believed in every single one of the miracles that are in Scripture. But he believed in God. He believed in the Bible. He believed in religious freedom. And he believed that the decisions in the life of the people should reside in the people and not from a government above denying them their heritage. Thomas Jefferson said that God who gave us life gave us liberty. The fight for religious liberty is the essential fight of what America is all about. Nobody has to go and get their muskets and bayonets. But they should alert their neighbors that there is a way to overturn Obamacare. There is a way to stop the government from forcing Catholic hospitals to either die or to kill their own conscience. There is a way for us to continue the American life, the respect for religion, that this group, in its lack of humility and in its abundant arrogance, is willing to challenge. We should do it. I ask you, please, to go out, convince your neighbors that what is at stake is the soul of America and also the soul of each and every one of us. May God help us in our task for the United States of America.
Thank you, Rabbi Spero. As I mentioned to you before this talk, it will make you think. And then, with the guidance, through prayer, and coming together. What we're going to do now, we have time for 6 questions. Okay, the first question.
Thank you very much. My name is Bill Lynch. The priest in my parish told me the other day that Michelle Obama went to a Protestant church and said that this is where we need to be discussing the things that are going on today. And he said that opened the window and the door for us as Catholics to be able to talk about that. And it's a statement that she followed. We know that people are going to be reading the bulletins and not going to this church before. Just what God says and figures that here. My question there is, what you see, why do we have to close down? Why not just define and say we're Catholic? We're going to keep doing what we're Catholic, period. Now, our leadership stands firm. I'm sure that the sheep will follow the sheep. That's all I can say.
The problem with that, and I'm sure that's here to also speak to this, is I'm sorry, all right. The lawsuits that will come will be devastating, and the state itself will go ahead and basically try to financially
Deny paying too. Just say we ain't doing it, period.
deny paying who.
We're not gonna pay the fines, we're not gonna stop doing what we're doing.
Sure,
We're Catholics, there's over millions of us in this country.
Sure.
We need to be united.
And I think that's what Cardinal George was basically predicting, is that that's what will happen. There's going to be basically, if this goes ahead, what we're going to see is a situation where
tonight. We're getting educated, and we'll move forward and take actions necessary. So our government officials will hear us. There's more of us and less of them. And if we organize all the religions together, they have to hear us. Here's our next question.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Ray Houston. I don't know if either of you or any of you folks in the audience were pleased to see when Cardinal Dolan came back from Rome, the speech that he gave at Holy Trinity. It was a magnificent speech. He outlined a whole lot of things about where to take action. But to me, the main message that he brought forth, and I'd like you guys to address that if you could, was that basically, for the most part, people of religion, of deep religious faith and morality, have kind of stayed on the sidelines when it came to politics. And as such, we have pretty much ceded the public square to people of, I wouldn't say immorality, but certainly not people of our faith and our morality and our values. And it was, to me, it was a siren call to say, the church itself was not necessarily a partisan politics, but it was incumbent upon those of us of faith, of morality, to make our presence known in the public square where we have ceded it to the other side. And if either of you folks would address that, I appreciate it.
There is no question that if people of faith, those within the Catholic community and the Protestant community, and those within the Jewish community of conservative faith, if they get up and do what they have to do, there will not be Obamacare in 2012. No one will have to go to prison. The diocese will be bankrupt because of civil suits. Obamacare will be repealed by the right people, if they are put in power after the election. The question is, why are so many in the faith community reluctant to get involved in politics? Not even 50% of us in the faith community vote. We have a problem in which we divide the temporal world from the spiritual world. And we think that, well, religion has to do with the spiritual world. And we leave those things of the temporal and practical world, we leave that to politicians and non-spiritual people. But you know, my friends, we live in a real world. God made us part of this temporal world. And actually, the way we become great, the way we elevate ourselves, is battling those battles in this real world of a spiritual nature. These issues, be it abortion, the definition of marriage, so many things, they are spiritual, but they are only realized in this temporal world, and we have to be involved in voting. We have to be involved in sending to Congress or to the presidency those people that respect us and respect our values and don't consider us, because we're religious, out of the mainstream, because we are the mainstream. There's also this misunderstanding of the verse that says, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and unto God that which is God, where we say, well, we'll take care of churches and worship and good works, and we'll leave the statecraft to Caesar. Well, in this country, we don't have a Caesar imposed upon us. We elect Caesar. We elect all the little Caesars underneath. And more than that, it's our job to make sure that the president stays the president and doesn't crown himself as Caesar.
I just want to mention one other thing too, is that one thing I see, especially as a teacher, is, it's not just about 2012. I think that's what the rabbi's saying. The problem today is that there's the young people coming up who don't understand a lot of these issues. They don't understand. And of course, the colleges are controlled by the militant secularists. So there's a brainwashing going on. And so people are not aware, not ready to fight these battles. it's just going to come on without you know what him, you know. And so that's why getting the word out is so important. It's not just about one president. It's about a culture that's being slowly formed that is anti-religion, anti-faith, anti-morality, and that's something where it's going to be a long-term struggle, I believe. So.
Good evening, my name is Lawrence Rosanna. I have a solution that is entirely different. This is a legislative issue. I'm saying that you could solve the whole problem in one thing in a court, the definition. Sure, Mr. Krug, you told me about they want to define the definition of what? Definition of religious freedom. 40, 50 years ago, Sheriff Lee Vernon, I'm a legal researcher. And the question is, don't you think that it's more important and it's least time, more or less resource training and stuff like that, to get a Supreme Court decision or a court decision to define religious freedom, the burden on the free exercise of religion, that you can change it that way rather than go on a legislative issue.
The question the gentleman had was, wouldn't it be just much easier to let the courts define religious freedom and having to go through all this election stuff? Number one, after 3 weeks ago, I don't know how much faith I have in the courts. I don't want to pass the buck. But my responsibility as a citizen, simply to 9 people in a row. This is America. People coming together, meetings, streets. We electing the people who represent what we believe. And if they get to Washington or the White House and they no longer represent us, we give them a one-way ticket back home. That's the American way.
Throw the bums out.
I have a very simple question. My friend just came back from Massachusetts from a retreat up there for a week, and the consensus up there was that Romney is throwing the election just like McClain threw the election 4 years ago. That's that.
Came, but we know what you
I know that one thing I can say, this is very important to me. He loves America. And I want to see a president again who I know deep in his heart and his fiber who loves this country, loves its history, loves its constitution, and humbles itself before it and the great people who founded this country. I don't want to get into more than that, but if you love the country, you'll respect the Constitution. I have found in my travels that those people involved in a certain type of self-worship think that they know more than the founding fathers. And they want to rewrite the Constitution to reflect their fashionable, neo-populist views. He has great respect for the Constitution. He doesn't have charisma. And he doesn't seem to have the feistiness that we'd like to see. And so, as a candidate, he seems a little weak. But if he's elected, he'll do what's right for the country out of respect for the country. He's not going to come into office to transform America. And I don't think that we'll have any problems of the diocese going bankrupt, fighting the government of the United States. I think that he'll do good by us and respect religious rights. He is a religious man. He's a Mormon. I'm collecting his very much. And he respects religion because he is a religious man. And so
Hi, my name is Erica King, and my question is, can either of you or both of you speak to the challenges and benefits of involving the Islamic community in this interfaith union against tyranny against religion? Against tyranny against religion, against fighting the tyranny that's taking place towards anti-faith. We want to talk about it? Okay.
I'm glad this issue is brought up, because on the world stage, this is the most important issue today. Today happens to be the release of a book that I wrote called Pushback. Today is the actual release, I think, for the first time you get Pushback on Amazon.com. The subtitle of Pushback is Reclaiming Our American Judeo-Christian Spirit. The biggest problem the world is having today is not the war of Islam against Israel and the Jews. It's the war of Islam against Christians. And in the book, one chapter, I asked the Christian community why they are being so silent when hundreds of thousands of Christians are being killed throughout Africa, if it was in Sudan, northern Nigeria, the Maronites in Lebanon, Coptic Christians in Egypt, all over they're being killed by warriors of Islam. The church is rather silent. Most of the Protestants are silent. I think they're afraid because if you even come to defend Christians from being murdered by Muslims, they'll call you an Islamophobe. And in this day and age, everyone is afraid of being called a name. And because of that fear, we're allowing things to happen that are genocide all across Africa, all across the Middle East. It's happening by the dozens, the rapes of women, the killing of men by the hundreds of thousands simply because these black people happen to be Christian and the Muslims want that land for Allah. And so there is a tyranny going on. And we're weak here in the West. And we're allowing this to happen. It's something that we will answer for. I think so many of us are afraid of being called that terrible name, Islam. Let me just conclude one thing. I'm from Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio. Great Catholic town, Cleveland, Chicago. We have a bishop in Cleveland, bishop in Chicago. I grew up on the schoolyards of the streets in Cleveland, and there was this little song we used to say, "Sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never harm me." We believe that. Call me whatever you want. Not going to harm me. Weapons might harm me, but I'll say what I have to say, especially what I'm saying is the cause of righteousness. We are living in times because people are so afraid of the other side, erroneously and wrongly calling us racist, misogynist, homophobic, mean-spirited, and Islamophobic, that we are allowing crimes against humanity, crimes against people to go unanswered because we're afraid that if we tell the truth, we defend someone who calls us a name. That is not the character and the strength of the men of my grandfather's era who were my mentors back in Cleveland, Ohio. It's sort of like Greenwich Village, Manhattan, is now spread all across the country. The sissification of the American male.
I'd like to mention Rabbi's book. Flyers are in the back, and you can also buy it on Amazon.com. Finally, I'd like to bring up to the podium Barbara Samuels from Super Seniors 912. She'll explain to you what's happening within Long Island and around the United States.
Long Island, maybe. The United States, that's a tall order. My name is Barbara Samuels. I come from a way distant place in the wilds called Dix Hills. And enough to bring tears to my eyes, and it should to yours, because this doesn't exist anywhere else. I know, I've been looking for it all across America. I work with a national group. It's a conservative group, and we're reaching out across America, and we're reaching out to churches of all faiths, and we're finding people are very concerned, and we're finding that they are trying, and they are working, but they don't have what's offered to you here tonight. You have a pastor who has empowered you to come together, to educate yourself and others, to form committees, to act, because we know if we're unhappy with something, it doesn't do good to come together and compare horror stories and say how bad this is, and did you hear that? And wait till I tell you what I saw on the internet today. Fine. If you leave this room or any conversation like that and think you have done something by listening and by mowing together, you are wrong, and America and our freedom seminar that teaches all across the country on our Constitution and religious rights. You know what? I'm sorry. On September 22nd, Aidan will have all that information for you, and will be in the bulletin, and will be in the bulletin. I'm sorry, I didn't write that. She's not from our parish.
Perhaps it might encourage you to come the following Monday at the cafeteria across the street at our school, and we'll have the handout for you then.
Okay, I'm for being unintelligible. I know it's a terrible thing, I don't have to hear it. The only thing I want to say is you have an amazing leader here. And then
Hold it closer, yeah.
and sitting here are more leaders. And you must lead. This is your time. You must lead. We have had an easy time in this country. No more. This is our First Amendment. You must lead. We all must lead. And when this election is over, and you have spoken, and you have elected representatives who respect your freedom of religion and your First Amendment, when that is over, you dare not go back to sleep. We must, in every faith community in this country, develop and establish an awe, a respect, and a thanksgiving to God for the freedom that we have to practice religion in this country, so that our children, our grandchildren, and their great-grandchildren know through their church community what a rare and precious gift was given to them with God's blessing and with the blood and the toil of their fathers. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Barbara. I think at this point right now, it's really important to understand that the focus of tonight was to educate you. And I believe you got a large amount of education. But if you're like me, I learn every single day. That's why I'm requesting you to come next Monday to the upper school cafeteria. After that, August 27th, we will have a speaker, Chris Hall. And if you want to know the calendar of events, as soon as I get the directory, I'll have the whole entire year, so you can choose when you're able to come. But it's very important not just to come, sit in the sidelines. Tonight, it's very important. The education has started. Continue the education. Learn how you're going to act. Each one of you can bring young people. We need the college students. We need your adult children. We need other faiths, your neighbors, your friends, your relatives. We need to fill this church, and they're outside waiting to come in. And it's our fight. It's not the Monsignor, the priest, it's the laity. We have to get up off our chairs, and we have to act. And it's now.